Welcome to I Caught It on Audio. This is Ride or Die episode 4, live.
Hello and welcome to Ride or Die 64 Tacos podcast. We are going to be talking about the band live today. In this series, what we do is we do a comprehensive discussion about the entire discography of a band. We've done Weezer and Counting Crows and Smashing Pumpkins in the past. So if you're interested in any of those bands, I'm sure you could find those wherever you're listening to this. And yeah, so today we decided just to do another one of our another 90s band live. And we're going to start by talking about the album Throwing Copper. This one was released in 1994, was certified 8 times platinum, and had several singles on it. And this is, if you've listened to any of our podcasts about music before, you know that we are all big fans of this album. It's definitely top 5 from the 90s for me. And so what are you guys' thoughts on this one beyond that?
Well, I agree. It's my favorite of their albums, and it is a top album from the 90s. I think what was the first single? Selling the Drama. I remember the Selling the Drama single coming out and thinking, number one, this is a band I hadn't heard before, but thinking I like this song. I like the sort of combination of like slightly acoustic-y, a little bit of that, and then like it kind of hit you with the guitars in the middle. And I think what this album does better than all their, maybe except for Secret Samadhi, is it really shows off how good they are at dynamics.
Yes.
And really like being able to punch you in the face with that sort of like alternative guitar sound. For an album that sold 8 million copies, it's not very alternative, but it has, and also like lots of great songs, a lot of variety in the songs, like in the style of songs. They don't all sound the same. I mean, I guess it depends who you're talking to.
No,
but
there's definitely a lot of variety. You've got, the album's all over the place. You've got your hits like Iris and I Alone and Lightning Crashes and I Alone and
yep.
Selling the Drama, and then you've got weird songs like TBD, and then you've got
and Iris, the one you mentioned.
Waitress and Stage are just really, really cool songs that just kind of get right into you. There's just something about this band and this album in particular where it just hits right in your chest as you're listening to it. It feels like
it's one of those albums that you like the radio songs, but you love all the album tracks. That's how I feel about it. It's just there's not a poor song, and there's very few even like good but not great songs. I pretty much enjoy pretty much every song on it. I've even come back around on Lightning Crashes, which was so ubiquitous for a while that I was kind of like, all right, that's enough of that. But when it pops up now, I'm like, oh, great. This is a great song too.
Yeah, this is definitely the first album that I was exposed to, and I mainly bought it because of Lightning Crashes, and it was all over the place, but I just loved the song so much, and I don't think I was really that in tune to other things that were going on the radio with like Selling the Drama and I Alone, but of course you heard them in passing, but those weren't the ones that really grabbed me. It was Lightning Crashes, and then I bought the album. I think I got it used at Vinyl Solution or something like that.
That makes sense.
It was, and I listened to the whole thing through, and I think one of my favorite ones was White Discussion.
Yes.
That one really stood out to me, and I think it stood out to me before it became a radio song. And I think it's also one of those ones that's not really. It was like a promo that they just kind of like threw out there towards the end of the album cycle.
Yeah,
because
it's weird that it was a single. Like it doesn't make any sense. Like the other 4 you can see as being radio signals.
Yeah, they're the more radio sounding songs on the
mid '90s, especially. But White Discussion doesn't make any sense as as a single. So I think you're right.
Right. Yeah. And thinking back to it, I was like, did I actually ever hear that on the radio? Because I could have sworn that I only ever listened to it on, from the album.
Right.
So I don't know. Like it may have just been something that they claim it was a single, but it never actually hit the radio that much. But
once you get into the fifth single on an album, you kind of lose track of where you heard it first too. So
yeah, by that time they better be cranking out something new because.
Well, I'll note that single came out 14 months after the first single. So, right. I mean, we had plenty of time to live with the album before it actually was released on the radio. Yeah. I remember hearing it on the radio, but not nearly as much as the first four singles, which were they were all on the radio all at the same time. And it was kind of great.
Yeah. It was lots of live exposure, which was good for the band to get going. And this is definitely one of those albums that I can throw on at any time and go from start to finish, and it's enjoyable, just like the first times I listened to it.
Yes, absolutely. The album it's just about perfect, and I love every second of it. Like we all said, Throwing Copper was our first introduction to the band live, but it's hardly their beginning. They had been active for nearly a decade before that album came out in various iterations. Death of a Dictionary is like an unofficial first album, and I don't think that's available anywhere. And then they came out with the EP, 4 songs, which I think I have on CD.
You used to. I remember you had it. A couple of those songs made it onto the next album too.
Yeah, and 2 of those songs wound up being on what is effectively their first real studio album, Mental Jewelry. So, after I fell in love with Throwing Copper, I thought, well, let's look into this band a little bit more. And then I grabbed 4 songs in Mental Jewelry. Mental Jewelry actually came out in 91, so it was 3 years prior to Throwing Copper. And as it turns out, it actually had quite a few singles on it as well, which I honestly don't remember hearing on the radio at all. And it went platinum too. And I have a feeling that may be a result of the success of Throwing Copper.
Mm-hmm.
It eventually went platinum as people, looked back. Mental Jewelry is a great album. It feels it's this weird thing that alternative bands seem to have happened in the early 90s is they had their second album was real big. You've got bands like Smashing Pumpkins, who we talked about, where their second album was really big, but their first album kind of was obscure. And you've got Nirvana, Nevermind was huge, and then they also had Bleach. Look at that. But there was another band that I was thinking of, to a lesser degree, I guess, Soundgarden. You've got Super Unknown was their huge album, and then Bad Motorfinger was lesser known.
Well, I think they had albums before that too.
Yeah.
But actually, Bad Motorfinger was pretty big too, because Outshined was a huge radio hit.
Yeah, that's
for
true.
Sure. So,
but there's just this thing where a lot of bands, it feels like they were, their debut album is their big one, and then they kind of peter off after that. But in the early 90s, it was their second album was the big one.
Well, you could definitely cite Radiohead into that model. Yes. Because although Creep was a hit, the rest of the album didn't sell that well. But then The Bends was a big leap forward, and I think it got a lot more attention for them after that.
Even Tool was that way too, because I don't think Undertow was that huge, but Anima was, and then people went back and found Undertow.
Yeah, right. And then there was also Opiate. I think Tool's a lot like Radiohead in that they had one big hit, and then everyone was like, "Well, yeah, but that's just a one-hit band." And then the next album solidified them as, "Oh no, they're going to be around for a bit." But yeah.
So what did you guys think of Mental Jewelry? Did you come to it the same way I did, where it was like Throwing Copper was so amazing that you looked at? I'm sure, Dan, you were probably very similar. So we were listening to music kind of in conjunction with one another at that time.
Yeah, we're the same age, and we're friends before we started listening to this music. Zach, you're a couple years younger, and we weren't friends till after this period. But I remember hearing Operation Spirit and Painlands on the Riverside on the radio. Okay. And those may have been kicked up after Mental Jewelry or Throwing Copper came out.
Right.
But I definitely heard them on the radio. But I started listening to Mental Jewelry because you bought Mental Jewelry and started playing it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is like, the REM version of live. Is what I thought.
Yes.
It's also acoustic,
That's a great correlation. Yeah, I never even thought of that.
And so all the songs have like the basic underpinning of acoustic guitar. That's pretty much what sort of is the core. Whereas in Throwing Copper, it's much more electric stuff. But so I remember liking Pain Lies on the Riverside and to a lesser extent Operation Spirit. And then the rest of them, they were just on in the car, like in your car, Dave, all the time. And I was like, oh, this is okay. I started to get to know the songs, and I was like, yeah, well, this is good. I mean, it's not Throwing Copper, but hey, that's fine. And then I ended up getting the album like a couple of years later, and then I was like, man, this is really good. Like it was like a slow build for me. Like initially, I was like, definitely not on the same level as Throwing Copper, and I still feel that way. But I have a lot of affection for this one. There's a lot of thematic similarities between the songs and like sonic similarities. But I feel like they're distinct enough to where I'm like, oh yeah, this song. Like you know what I mean? Like it doesn't. They don't like all mush together. But I could totally see somebody thinking that they all kind of sound the same because there's not nearly as much variety and dynamic interplay as there is on Throwing Copper. What about you, Zach? Did you ever really listen to this one?
No, I didn't. This one was totally off my radar because it was Throwing Copper and On. That was where I started, and I don't think it was until I got a hold of like streaming music service account that I actually went and listened to this because I never owned it. I don't think I ever downloaded it, but it was at a point when I was trying to like go through some of their old stuff before this podcast preparation for this podcast that I did listen to it, and yeah, it lacks the polish of the later albums and of Throwing Copper even.
Yep, absolutely.
And that's okay. I mean, I like to see, or I like to hear where a band starts and what their kind of writing style is and what and I see also this was produced by Jerry Harrison, which is one of the Talking Heads members.
And he produced Throwing Copper too, I think.
Yeah. Yep. And that's pretty cool because I love when there's I don't think there's a Talking Heads influence on the music necessarily, but maybe some of his sonic stylings from Talking Heads do kind of get pulled in regardless.
Some of the percussion choices I feel like were maybe things that were he could have hypothetically brought to the table. There's a hint of that sort of world beat in the way that some of the tracks flip the snare off and go with a little more sort of outside the box world beat type percussion. So maybe I never actually didn't think about that at all. I knew Jerry Harrison was the producer, but I honestly knew Jerry Harrison as the producer of Throwing Copper before I knew him as a member of Talking Heads.
And that's my favorite thing about this album personally is the drumming. I mean, Ed's singing's always entertaining, but the drumming is just really, really good. I mean, I don't know if it's quality drumming, but it's always interesting,
Yeah.
And the whole rhythm section in this album just does an amazing job where it keeps your attention on the songs and it kind of drives the songs more so than the guitars do.
Well,
and that's partly because it's acoustic guitars in a lot of them, I would say. But yeah, it's the rhythm is. I'll admit it got me.
Yeah, and I actually absolutely agree because for me, right around the time that live started becoming a thing, we were 15 when Throwing Copper came out, and a year later, I was working my first job at Target. First real job, and I remember like working in the back room, and someone had the GRD or whatever radio station on, and that's the first time I heard "Pain Lies by the Riverside," lies on the Riverside, and that of course is the bass line in that is very prominent because there's the and this supports your idea even more because it starts out with just the drum beat, that sort of like hi-hat riding drum beat. and then it kicks in with a little bass like do 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 do, and then it kicks into like this slap pop bass line, which I was playing bass in our band at the time, so I was like, ooh,
Right.
yeah, everything that was a cool bass thing, I was like, yeah, I like that. So that really jumped out, and that is, I think, is a feature of the first few albums. Number one, I think Chad Gracie is a really, really awesome like rock drummer. His drums sound amazing, but like distinctly like him. And then his parts are they get just enough wrinkles to make them really, really sort of fascinating without being like super over the top. So I agree. I think one of their real strengths is the rhythm section. Anyhow, Zach, you were talking about your experience where we kind of barged in on that.
Well, that was, I think I've touched upon enough of it. I think I heard some of the single songs on the radio. And again, I'm not sure if it was at that time or, when the album came out, or if it was later because of the success of Throwing Copper. But yeah, I like the singles. I like some of the later tracks as well, and I agree with you guys. I think the drumming is like one of the big focal points, and I think it has more to do with the production of that era, because you can actually like hear the drums. It's not this was at a time when they weren't really compressing the snot out of everything to get like more volume and things like that, and so you can really hear the dynamics of the drums, and so it's more pronounced and sounds a lot better.
Sounds natural, like a human's playing it, not like sort of an impossibly repeated, drum sounds that you could recreate with a computer if you wanted to.
Right. And so sometimes that underproduced or underpolished or whatever type of thing of an earlier era is actually a good thing, because it may not sound as like crisp and perfect as something produced nowadays, but it also it's in some ways it sounds better just because you can actually hear what's going on in the instruments, and it doesn't get all muddy and stuff.
Yeah. So Throwing Copper was a huge success. Went back, listened to Mental Jewelry, thought, oh my goodness, this band's actually really good. Just wasn't a one-off thing. The new year, it turns to a new year in 97, and Secret Samadhi comes out, which I was so excited about. I think I might have got it, the week it came out or something like that.
Day one.
Yeah. Went up to Meyer, grabbed it, brought it home, paid the $19, $20 or whatever it was. You didn't wait for it to hit BMG. Just went and got it, right? Yeah. Brought it home, or probably put it in the Discman, plugged the little tape adapter in, and listened to it in the car. I did not know what to think of this album.
Yeah, really?
It was.
I remember hearing
so bizarre.
Juice.
Well, so that single was the first single, and I'm just looking now. It's released January 27, 97, and that is exactly, of course, that's correct. But we were seniors in our last semester in high school, and we had already had the first wave of albums. When we were like 15, 16, and we were starting to get licenses and drive and hang out and get into music and be in bands and stuff. And I remember hearing that, it's a new song from Live. The new album's coming out. That and like Pinkerton and albums like that were like that second wave of albums from bands we loved. And I remember The King is Juice was first, and I was like, oh, new single from Live. What's going to sound like? And then it has that insane, like super heavy, like guitar riff. And you're like, I remember being like, fuck yeah, that is the best. That was my reaction to Now, when I took the album and I got somewhere around the part, by the time I got around to Hero Cycle Dreamer, I was like, what the fuck is this shit? This is, not like bad, but like bizarre, like deliberately trying to be weird. And I think that's actually a bit of a strength of the album, because it sounds nothing like any of their other albums. But yeah, I was like it had some really like Turn My Head and Lakini's Juice, and one of my personal favorites, Gas Head Goes West, are like, oh yeah, they sound like great singles. Not that Gas Head ever was a single, but they sound like singles that make sense. Even Rattlesnake was a good single, but some of those other songs are so strange. And it's what they're trying to do, and that's really charming. Well, once you wrap your head around it.
an example of a band who just came off of all the success in the world. You know, they're at the height of their career, and they're allowed to do whatever they want in the studio. They're just given free reign, and they write exactly what they want. And it's some weird stuff. And I love it. Secret Samadhi is one of my secret favorite albums. Because it doesn't, you present this to someone and it doesn't quite make sense why I like it so much. But I made this comparison to you not too long ago, where if you compare Live to Weezer, Throwing Copper is the Blue album, a huge commercial success, and then immediately following you've got Secret Samadhi and Pinkerton, which are basically the same step. They both went in that same direction where they just did whatever they wanted. And I don't think the public, it sold 2 million albums, Secret Samadhi did. So it was by no means a failure, but after 8 million, eight times platinum, that's not what you're hoping for.
Right.
It's definitely a step down.
Yeah.
Now that said, I love the album. You've got those weird songs like Freak and Hero Psycho Dreamer and
Unsheathed.
Yeah.
And Sound of the Whole New Universe. Very, very weird. But they did such a good job, even more so than Throwing Copper. They leaned into their ability to add drama and through the use of dynamics, which, you can pretty much link how much I love a live album based on how much dynamic they use. That's a pretty fair way to look at it, because they, right off the get go with Licini's Juice, but even Rattlesnake, it has that slow start, and then it really kicks in with this big huge chorus. They do that in they sort of build up in Grays. And then they have those songs like Ghost where they never really explode, but it sounds so different from the rest of the album that it makes it stand out. And I just love the sort of surprise of every song, even though the album, you're still like, oh yeah, this one, this one's weird, or this one's totally different. I just think I don't think it's as good as Throwing Copper as far as how consistent it is.
Throwing Copper's perfect.
But I love the way the album sounds. I love the way they totally went for it. And it's good to also have this album on top of Throwing Copper.
Yeah, I think this one actually might have gotten more spins, more play than Throwing Copper for me, just because I was coming in at the tail end of Throwing Copper, and then when this came out, I was so excited about it, and it was the direction that I love, the weirdness.
Yeah.
And so it really excited me. And I was like, yeah, this is awesome. Cause it still has the same flavor, but it seems so radically different. And, and I think, I think when you've got that drop from the 8 million to 2 million, I think the vast majority of grunge heads or, whoever was really in love with Throwing Copper, they heard this album and they're like, mm-mm. They heard Licini's Juice or Freaks on the radio, and they're like, "Nope, not for me. I'm not going to do it." Which is sad because I think they're missing out.
I think they lost the people who signed up for Lightning Crashes and I Alone.
Yes,
right.
That group of people, the more pop people, they didn't stick around for Secret Samadhi, and like you said, they missed out big time. And maybe it wasn't what they wanted, and that's perfectly fine. Because it's very different, but it's a perfect companion piece to Throwing Copper. I think it's if you want all the weirdness of Throwing Copper emphasized, then you've got Secret Samadhi, and it's just a fun, great album, and it just makes you wonder how in the world it even got made, honestly, and it's just so bizarre.
And as a little foreshadowing to the next album we'll talk about, if you want to lean into the polish, then you should listen to The Distances Here, the polished side of Throwing Copper, because they definitely turned away in many ways from the bizarreness. And I don't know if that was a reaction to criticism or the relative lack of sales. 2 million is pretty darn good these days, but back then, I think more was expected. But yeah,
coming off of 8 million, 2 millions, yeah,
yep.
So yeah, the Distance to Here, again, to continue the Weezer analogy, it's effectively Weezer's Green album, where they returned to all of the things that made Throwing Copper popular and emphasized that and doubled down on it, just like Weezer did with the when they made the Green album. They went back to all the success of the Blue album because like Secret Samadhi, Pinkerton was not successful. They live doubled down on the success of Throwing Copper, and we got The Distance to Hear.
Now, Zach, did you and Dave, did you guys listen? I bought this album when it came out and listened to it right away. But did you guys also get it and invest time in it?
I did not.
I did. Yep. It was a day one purchase for me, and I listened to it over and over and over again. And I was taken aback at first because I was like, this is not really this is kind of the opposite direction of Secret Samadhi. But then I really started to like it. Like it grew. It was a grower. It grew on me, and I there's something about some of these melodies, whether it's the Dolphins Cry, or I think it was Where Fishes Go, Face and Ghost. There's just some really great melodies in there that really, it's not always the lyrics. It's not always the dynamics. Sometimes just like if a melody gets stuck in my brain, I just want to keep listening to it over and over again. And I think that's what this one did.
I didn't buy it, but my now wife, girlfriend at the time, did buy it, so I got to listen to it when I was hanging out with her, but I never bothered to go buy it. I don't know, Dolphins Cry didn't really, like, that was the first single, right?
Yep.
Yes.
It didn't grab me, and the title, The Distance, I don't know, this whole album confused me when it came out. I wasn't sure if the album was called the Dolphins to Hear or whatever. I couldn't add it all together, I don't know. But going back and listening to it now, I actually really enjoyed it. I was pleasantly surprised as I went through it. It's not as good as Throwing Copper, and it's not as interesting as Secret Samadhi. And we're back to Jerry Harrison again producing it, which shows, because it has more of his feel that you had from Throwing Copper and Mental Jewelry in it. But it's a good album.
I really like this album, but it is definitely a step down for me in some ways. You mentioned the Dolphins Cry. The Dolphins Cry was one of the first times where I found myself cringing a little bit at Ed Kowalczyk and his lyrics. I mean, there's plenty to cringe about, if your mother goes to bed with you, etc. On Secret Samadhi. But he started to get into sort of like hokey range, not bizarre, but like hokey, and you could make that accusation about a lot of the sort of spiritual ramblings on Mental Jewelry and his vague obsession with hating but kind of wanting spirituality and religion, and that's fine. It's fun to wrestle with that. But I started some of the lyrics just kind of stand out as being slightly odd, especially in the first half of the album, which I feel is a little stop-start. Although I can't say I dislike any of the songs. I actually like the songs. The Dolphins Cry has like it's like a really pop version of what makes live great, big vocals, like, the guitar hits, and, it's really well done. But my initial reaction when I heard that single was, well, I guess, I don't know. I don't know if I want to be into your rose garden of trust, like there was some like high school poetry stink on some of the lyrics.
Well, and from my perspective, it didn't help that I thought the line was, Lolita's all right, Lolita's sheep will lead us. I can hear the Dolphins cry, whatever the next line is. So I was very confused about sheep and dolphin and Lolita and what is going on in this song.
And would you be surprised if Ed Kowalczyk wrote lyrics that included Lolita and her cry? Like that's right up his alley. So
yeah,
it's
Lolita
an understandable
and her
thing.
Flock of sheep and
sure.
I wasn't surprised that that's what I heard.
what really, and of course, Dolphins Cry is catchy, and Run to the Water is catchy. I thought like the sort of guitar riff on The Distance was super interesting, and I liked that. But what really ended up sort of selling me on the album were basically Face and Ghost through We Walk in the Dream. Face and Ghost, Feel the Quiet River Rage, Meltdown, Stood Up for Love, and Walk in the Dream are like the sort of best version of like non-weird live that that happens after Throwing Copper for me. Like they're great melodies, they're rousing choruses. I don't know, they just wormed their way into my head, and I love the second half of this album, and I enjoy the first half of the album. I think this one, I think it's probably, I think it's better than a lot of people give it credit for.
It's certainly better than I thought it was. I'll say that.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, because I know that you didn't really listen to it very much back when it came out. But I remember having it in the car for weeks at a time, driving around, back in '99 and 2000, and it really grew on me. And I still enjoy going back to this one. I wouldn't say that. I mean, it's kind of in the ballpark for me of Mental Jewelry. They sound very different, but they're both that sort of like, well, they're not the top tier live for me, which is Throwing Copper and Secret Samadhi, but I still really, really like them. And I think, if someone put an album out today, that got on the radio that sounded like this, I would be ecstatic.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. It would be nice if someone could write music as good as this right now, because it's not happening.
Well, it is. It's just hard to find.
Yeah.
Like,
yes,
the radio is not giving us this. That's for sure.
I would like to make one more point about this album, which is this is probably some of the best singing by Ed Kowalczyk, and I say that as it's actually a problem. It was like the one thing that confused me the most, because I was like, wow, this sounds too good. Like, this sounds like he's really singing very well. And I think some of his earlier work was actually better when he was not trying to do that. Like when it was more emotional and more like
more passionate.
Yeah, more passionate and more like of the moment. And I felt like this was very rehearsed and very, very calculated.
Yeah.
And it's not bad. It's just that it struck me as so strange, because it was like, this is not the live that I've come to know. This is not the Ed I know.
I think you've hit on something there, which I never really processed that or came up with that in my head, but when you say it sounds exactly right. And I think this is the beginning of Ed starting to take the band over and kind of being the main voice. What I always thought was great about live is, I talked about how I really like Chad Gracie's drums. I just think they're that great, like super technical, but like great for rock songs. Interesting parts. I like the way Patrick Dahlheimer plays bass. He makes the bass lines prominent frequently. I love Chad Taylor's guitar tone. I love his like wonky non-solos, like his sort of noise solos. These are all amazing things. And Ed's a great singer, and he's also the main songwriter, for all this stuff. So of course he is kind of he's the QB of the band. He's the most important, I totally get that. But I feel like this is where we start to get you're starting to get some hints that Ed is maybe his ego's getting the best of him. I don't know. I don't know if we've got a Billy Corgan type scenario here, or if it's just, when you're the person writing pretty much all the songs, not all, but like a lot of the songs, you start, it's that sort of beginning to take over like some of the decision making on, like we start to, I feel like it just became sort of the focal point of the band. And that's not a bad thing, because he's such a good singer and songwriter. But I think you lose something. And I think in the albums that are coming ahead, that's maybe where they started going a little awry, in my opinion. But now we're ready to get into stuff that I don't think any of us spent much time with.
No.
The next one up is V or 5, depending on, I don't know what their intent was. I assume it's 5 because it's their 5th album. My feeling on this one was when Simple Creed came out, that was the song that I heard. No, it was Simple Creed. Yeah, that was the first single, wasn't it? Yep, it was the first single. And I remember thinking, oh, I don't know, like that. It's like, and I don't know why it stuck in my head, but I mentioned this to you, Dave, when we were talking about even doing a Ride or Die for Live, which was, let's just say, I don't need to hear him saying like the word puppy scruff. The way he chooses to say puppy scruff in Simple Creed, somehow, like, I was like, oh, I don't know, Ed. I don't know if I can go this way. Yep. What did you guys think? Why don't you start, Zach? What were your thoughts on this album?
So notice how I mentioned that I purchased Secret Samadhi and The Distance to Here the day one when it came out. Mm-hmm. That did not happen for this album, and quite frankly, I don't even think I knew that it came out. I may have downloaded it and never listened to it.
So it was released like a week after the September 11 attacks.
Okay.
So
you're right.
I don't think it was on anybody's. New music was not on anybody's radar at that time.
I have a distinct memory of this. Sorry to jump in, but you just reminded me of something. Josh Zylstra lived in a house with like 6 guys, and we were all going to college. And I went over there. I didn't really like hang out with them all the time, but I knew, Mark Steenwijk and Mark Burgers, and some of the guys that we knew from Grand Rapids Christian, from high school. And then we had there were some other like people from Calvin people that I kind of knew here and there because I was friends with Josh. And we were down. We were playing poker for some reason. I don't remember why. It's not like I played a lot of poker or anything, but we were in the basement playing poker for like penny antes. And we were sitting there, and the radio was on, and Simple Creed came on, and first it was Nickelback was on, and we were like, "Gosh, this is the worst." And then the live song came on, and one of the guys was like, "Yeah, I don't know about this one." I don't know. We were all kind of like, "Yeah, I don't know if live has it anymore." And that was before, I believe that was right at the beginning. It must have been near the beginning of the school year there, if it came out in September. But we were all, or maybe it was in the summer probably, and we were all like, and I remember thinking, yeah, this song is not convincing me of anything. In fact, I think maybe I don't like new live stuff. Like that was my thought process. Did you have any memories, Zach, from when you downloaded of any of the songs other than Simple Creed, or did you even?
I don't even have honestly. I don't have a memory of Simple Creed either. That just nothing about this album other than Deep Enough, strangely, because it wasn't a single. But I think it was maybe from having seen the Fast and the Furious, because I'm seeing that it was on that soundtrack. So,
yeah, well, okay. Maybe I screwed up. Maybe this was glorious. Fast and Furious is always dead on when it comes to taste.
Hey, that first movie was kind of cool at the time period. Okay,
well, we were kind of still only about like 20 at the time. I think is what
we don't need to get off into Paul Walker territory and Vin Diesel. Okay, but suffice to say, I do really like the trip hop. You guys probably don't care about him, but Tricky, the trip hop.
We saw Tricky at Lollapalooza in 97.
Okay. I absolutely love him. I love all of his work. I love his stuff that he did with Massive Attack. So when we were getting ready for this, and I started listening to us, I was like, hey, that sounds like Tricky. And then I went and I looked at the liner notes, and I was like, yep, sure enough, it's Tricky. And I was like, it's not really jiving with. I mean, it's cool that they kind of did the crossover or whatever. Or they tried to mix genres a little bit, but no, it just, there's something about it that just doesn't work, and nothing really. I will say that going back and listening to all these albums, this is better than what comes later. But that's kind of frightening considering how bad this is already.
I think they lean. Sorry to cut you off there, Dave. Real quick, to hop on the Tricky thing. I think they wanted to get into something different, and that was kind of big at the time. And there's definitely some like drum beats popping up here and there, and like a lot more keyboard and stuff. And I just don't think it works with what they're trying with what they do well. I think that's maybe what makes it more interesting than the albums that came after, but I think that is a negative. it's a failed experiment, and they didn't really even commit to it very well. But Dave, what are your thoughts?
I hate this album. I hate it. I hate it with every fiber of my being. I nearly killed children in the carpool during the morning listening to this, trying to thumbs down songs. There was a point where I took the phone, which is connected to the Bluetooth. I took it out of the holder, handed it to my son, and said, "You need to thumbs down this song. I don't know why I can't press the thumbs down button, but that is the only thing that's important right now."
Yeah.
And I'm looking back, and I thumbs down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't thumbs down songs very, very often, but 6 out of these songs were all thumbs down, and they just, including the first 6, and then also another one. It wasn't until Forever May Not Be Long Enough. And that may be because I have some undying love for Glenn Ballard because of his Aerosmith influence.
What was up with that intro? They wanted me to murder someone. Is why they did that. It's truly annoying, and I don't understand the purpose or who's making like the sound, like who is like talk whatever. It's remarkably annoying. Like, how can you get a 37-second intro wrong that much?
Especially when you're just coming off of, Dance With You from The Distance to Here.
Yeah.
That song ends, which is a nice, pleasant song. And then you go straight, you go into this god-awful intro, which what the hell are they doing? And then Simple Creed, I hate that song. And Deep Enough is not good. And Like a Soldier is not good. And People Like You is horrible. And Transmit Your Love, I don't even know what he's trying to do with that song, but I could not get through these songs fast enough. I have not disliked an album in this series more than I disliked this album.
Oh, wow, that's
like there was that really the country album that Counting Crows did, which I did not like. I really didn't like that one, but this was worse. There was what was the bad Weezer one?
There were several. Wasn't just one.
Gratitude, maybe.
No, Gratitude is fine.
Okay.
Was it the Black Album?
The Black Album. I hated the Black Album, but this album was worse.
Yeah.
None of the Smashing Pumpkins albums angered me because they were so mundane.
Yeah.
When they weren't good, I should say. But man, I did not like this album. I wanted it to end every time it came on.
I don't know if I hate it with the heat of 1,000 suns like you did, but I did not like it. I did not find any of it particularly. I found its attempts to experiment irritating and out of place. Yep. And I don't remember any song sticking out as being really particularly good. I don't rate them as I go, but like, I don't think any of these songs were very good. How did they lose their ability to use dynamics to make the song interesting? Like what happened to
I'll tell you how they did it. You look at the producer credits and it's Live. Live is who's credited as the producer. And I mean, there are some bands that can do that and put out amazing albums, but I think the vast majority of bands and musical artists, they need that additional set of ears in the producer's chair to take what the band is creating and make something and make the best product it can be.
You might be right. Zach, what was your final grade for the album?
Awful. And I very well may have listened to it when I downloaded it and just completely forgot or like blocked it out. But no, it's awful. Like so I'm looking on Wikipedia, and the Forever May Not Be Long Enough one, which is arguably one of the better tracks on the album.
I would say it's the best one on the album.
Closing credits for the Mummy Returns. So it's almost like they were just trying to, like, I don't know, do something. It's not even really that poppy though. That's the crazy part. But they were just maybe trying to be more commercialized and try and get songs on movies or something. I think
they were trying to tap into the zeitgeist of the moment when it came to sound, and they were trying to piggyback on things that were popular. I remember that Overcome song. that one sticks in my head because I really hate the way he sings the chorus on it.
Yeah.
And I don't like disliking the way Ed Kowalczyk sings stuff, but
No.
because he's one of my favorite vocalists. If we just kind of
Absolutely.
stop in '99 or so,
Yeah.
after that
Yeah.
things get a little.
No, he has one of the best catalogs of vocal performances in those first four albums.
Yeah.
But
So
then
we all hated it, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
pretty much.
So, yeah.
and I'm
now it's
done
time
talking
to-
about it if you guys want to move on.
Yeah.
Let's move on to
Please.
Birds of Prey.
Yeah, let's rip the
and let's-
Band-Aid off and go to
let's-
Birds of Prey.
So I remember this single, what is it? Heaven. And I will say this for Heaven, it is a very well executed, inspirational, contemporary Christian song.
Yes.
This is the first toe into the water of Praise Band that
I
Live
was
makes.
going to say that.
Yeah. You
This
got there
is
first.
yeah. This is I actually don't mind hearing the song Heaven. It's awfully it's awfully corny. But it does it very well, and it's very well executed. What is not as well the rest of the album to me just sounds like worse versions of that song. And that was my take. Dave, go ahead, and I've stolen your thunder. Let's hear what you got.
So when I say a really good praise band, what I want to say, I want to qualify that with the best of praise bands is a pretty mediocre band.
Yeah.
And this album just sounds like they are a really good praise band. Like it's like Heaven is the song that you go to church and you can't wait for the praise band to get up on stage because that's the best part of the church service. And wow, listen to this great song that the praise band is playing.
Well, it's more like, look, listen, I'm in church and I'm hearing drums and electric guitar.
Exactly.
Well, this is better than a sermon or the organ. That's how praise bands
exactly
for me.
And even the best of praise bands is not that great of a band, and that's what this album feels like. It feels like an album that was only made because it's live. It's these guys that have had a lot of success in the 90s, and they don't know what to write anymore. So Ed's just writing whatever the hell he wants because nobody else seems to have anything to say or do. And maybe they're just all out of ideas. Maybe that's all there is to it. And so they let him write his praise band album. And yeah, it's just pretty mundane and uninteresting. Like, it didn't make me mad, but yeah. Zach, what did you think?
So when Dan said that the Dolphins Cry kind of made him cringe a little bit for the lyrics.
Yes.
Heaven makes me cringe, and that probably says more about me and my distaste for Christianity and praising stuff. But yeah, it's just I could barely get through the song. I was like, I kind of feel like I need to turn this off. And I generally do not do that about really any music unless it's really, really rubbing me the wrong way. And then, the rest of the album it doesn't feel quite as bad as that, but that's mainly because I already checked out and I wasn't paying as much attention.
Right.
It just sounds like background live music that you don't care about, and it's like, why do I need to listen to this more than once? I don't.
Yeah. It's really bland. And I think, is this the one, is Out to Dry the song that I'm thinking of? It's one of the rare songs in their later catalog that reminds me of old Live. I think it's Out to Dry. I might even be thinking of a song.
Track 11.
And what I realized was, it is, if it's the one I'm thinking of, it's just Stage done worse. But
yes, no, you're absolutely right.
It still reminds me that the riff is almost the same, right? It's almost the same, but like Stage is so much better. But that said, on this album, that's the most interesting song. Yeah. Like the knockoff Stage is the most interesting song. Other than that, I agree that it's the lyrics are super cringy, and he used to wrestle with spirituality all the time, and that's great. I don't maybe he's found peace with, how he sees the world, and that's good for him, but it does not make for interesting lyrics. It does not make for, for as good a music, apparently. And I personally don't have as big of a problem with Heaven because it simply executes the formula better than any other song on this album. I don't hate it, but it is a little, it's pretty cringy. Everything else on the album is like, oh, it's that, but it's not even like, it doesn't even use the big live chorus like that, or it isn't even like, if you change the lyrics in Heaven, I would like it more. But like, I don't, the rest of the songs, I'm like, they're just not that good of songs. So I don't care about the lyrics, you know?
What this album does is it takes, it eliminates the difference between Creed and live. It's like they have merged into one, because like there are a lot of parallels between Creed and live, because Creed could have been a good band had things unfolded differently, potentially. Live was a really good band, and then they kind of met at Birds of Prey, the sonically and thematically, and me not caring at all about it anymore.
Yeah, this is Creedy. That's a good point. I did not make that connection. What I would say about Creed is they were never as interesting musically. They just had one gear basically, whereas live used to be interesting musically. But you're right. There's a little bit of that sort of like vague spirituality and like really obvious lyrics that you're like, yeah, okay, I guess that's nice. But like, I swear I heard over these last two albums, I heard the concepts of peace, love, God, spirituality, connect, like too often. It's like, I'm sorry. I thought that he kind of dwelled on spirituality, arguably a little too much on Mental Jewelry, because they're all kind of thematically about those things. But I don't even think that that's that bad. That's just an argument you could make. It's just it's so much. It's so much. Sorry, Zach, you were describing your love for this album a moment ago.
So I didn't quite have the visceral response to 5 that you did, Dave, until I got to this one, and then I was just like, no, this is no good. And then it kind of made me appreciate 5, because I was like, wow. That that one, like once you get to the dog shit, the one beforehand is not so bad, but it's still pretty bad.
Well, 5 is really grating, but they're at least trying stuff. I feel like they're not trying stuff at this point.
Yeah, and it almost to the point where you're looking
at God wants you to either be hot or cold, not lukewarm, which Birds of Prey is perfectly lukewarm.
Yeah, very much so. Really boring, bland.
I like how the track names like Lighthouse and Rivertown are almost trying to evoke earlier, like lightning crashes and Pain on the Riverside.
I know.
It's trying to like evoke, those earlier days.
I mean, listen to the name of these songs: Heaven, She, the Sanctity. I'm guessing I haven't checked, but I'm guessing She is just the female god. That's probably what she means. Sanctity of Dreams, Runaway, Life Marches On, Sweet Release. Like, what are we fighting for? Bring the people together. I mean, some people love this sort of like motivational, inspirational stuff, but I find it very boring and uninteresting. You can inspire people a different way. That's not so obvious. This is a bad album. Unfortunately, it may arguably be better than the album that follows it, I think. Because it's full on praise band by this album. For me, like it's if anything, it's more so. It's more bland. It's less interesting. That was my take on.
I do agree.
The Black Mountain.
Unless you have more on Birds of Prey, Zach.
No,
I do agree that
move on.
Songs from the Black Mountain is definitely as boring, if not more so, and less interesting than Birds of Prey. But I don't think it's as praise bandy. I feel like it's just more adult contemporary. You're going to hear it on the elevator. It's that non-offensive music you're just going to hear in the background and never notice, because it doesn't have anything interesting going on at all. And it is just completely bland and mundane. That's the way that the Black Mountain came off for me.
When I started listening to this one, it was right after Birds of Prey, and I think the first track or the first two tracks, I was like, "Oh, okay, this could be better." And then as I got deeper into the album, I was like, "This is not better. This is not getting better." and it just didn't. No, I checked out again. It just I didn't feel anything. I didn't care about any of the music, none of the lyrics, none of the instrumentation. There was just nothing there that was like, oh, I'm having a good time, or I want more of this. And it's really sad because from where they came from and how great they were, in the mid to late 90s, it just went completely full circle and dropped off and died out. It's like live. They should have ended probably in 2000. Like they should have been done. Yeah. Like Ed, go on and do something else. The band go and maybe find Scott Stapp. No, I'm just kidding. Go just find somebody else to do this thing.
His name is Chris Shin, and he was
Chris Shin.
So. Yeah, no, I agree. The first two songs, they're a little closer to the sort of a little bit of that old live sound, but I think it really, really peters out quickly. And by the time we got to Home, the sort of like bring the boys back home from war, it was like that's a lovely sentiment. I am against war, so I want to bring the boys home, but I found myself like wanting to disagree, like wanting to like make arguments about the necessity of war to Ed as he was singing to me. And did we have to do the military like snare drum during every song that's vaguely related to war or armies? Like, do we have to do that? Well, they had to do that. So yeah. And by that point I was like, man, and I think this album is slightly less overtly praise bandy in the lyrics. I just feel like it's even safer in the music, and which makes me think of the full on praise band thing. Like the music is so safe. It's like, oh, the kids will love it. There's amplifiers and like a drum kit, but like that's all I can say. Now, did you guys listen to The Turn at all? The album without Ed?
I couldn't bring myself to do it.
I went through it once. You can tell there's a little more of the sort of like I don't know how to describe it, but there's a little more of the instruments trying to assert themselves in it at times.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, because there's no Ed to sort of like eat it all up. But that said, they don't really take advantage, and I just think about how a band that could write songs like Iris, on Throwing Copper or Lakini's Juice, has to follow a formula so desperately. Like there's just no surprises, there's no space in the songs. There's no like inventiveness. It's just boring. And Christian is like a perfectly acceptable like singer. I think there's a slight Ed Kowalczyk impression going on, but it's he really fades into the background. It's not.
Is he a contest winner of some kind or something?
I don't think
like a reality show or.
I don't think they went the route of what's the band with Michael Hutchence. They didn't go full on In Excess. They didn't go full on. Let's make a TV show and whatever. I don't know how they sort of.
But is he from like American Idol or something like that?
Let me see. It says he was from the band Unified Theory. Okay. I know his dad owns a car dealership. No, his dad used to own like an NBA team or something. Okay. So he's a rich kid. For better
the Charlotte
or worse.
Hornets.
Yeah. Yep. George Shin, I think. This is forgettable, but honestly, I think if you made me choose an album to listen to, and it was this Birds of Prey, Simple or 5, or Songs from Black Mountain, I would choose this one because it's less awful. It's just once again kind of forgettable. And so it's not just Ed, sort of dominated and started writing safe stuff. The band doesn't really have much. And I know as I'm looking at the the tracking list, I don't know how much involvement the band had in writing the album. There's a lot of, there's a lot of other names popping up on the credits. So sadly, even though they did a reunion tour in 2017, I think Ed has now kicked everybody else out of the band, and now from now on, it's just going to be Ed touring. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to say about Songs from Black Mountain or anything else on that?
No, I would like to say that what's his name, Jerry Harrison, was the producer on that last
The Turn.
On The Turn.
Yeah.
Back for that, so maybe that's why it had more emphasis on the instruments. Also,
I don't think it was good, but it was okay. It was an okay rock album, whereas the other three were praise band nonsense. And then I can't even explain 5. That one was bizarre, but not in good ways. Yeah, I didn't. Again, for me, I'd rather have They're Trying Weird Shit than Birds of Prey and Songs from Black Mountain. But it's not like I thought 5 was good. I thought it was a huge step down from The Distance to Here. And honestly, all you need is the first 4. Zach, now here's a question for you. I'm pretty sure you will not spend any time with the last, the
last 3.
Yeah, the whole new millennium of Live. But will you spend more time with the one you didn't listen to? Mental Jewelry?
Yeah, and I already have. Yeah, not having really listened to it as much as you guys did, or at all potentially. My memory is pretty hazy of it, but I've already listened to it several times. It's definitely more fun and more enjoyable than these latter 3 albums. So yeah, it's become part of the quad rotation of Live. Yeah, Mental Jewelry to Distance to Here. That's really all you need, I think.
Well, what's been interesting about this Ride or Die, series is every once in a while I'll find some music from one of these bands where I'm like, oh, cool. Yeah, I'll put that in my back pocket. That's pretty good. There were some Counting Crows, if not entire albums. There were some songs or sides of albums that I thought were pretty good. Yeah. Boy, I don't really I can't say the same about Weezer because I didn't
Van Weezer was good. You have to admit Van Weezer was a good album. Not Blue Album level or Pinkerton level, but it was a good album. There were some good moments on it. Not all. Some of them had nothing but I had nothing but hatred for, but there were some good moments on that one and OK Human where I was like, this is pretty good. But it was all like pretty good in the sort of category of like maladroit or make believe, where I was like, well, this isn't, top level, but it's, it's clearly better than the other stuff. But it's kind of nice when you find something, where you're like, okay, this is good. But the other thing it does, this series of podcasts is it makes me not feel bad about missing out on most of this stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes I would sit and think, why did I bail on that band? I felt guilty about not listening to more Smashing Pumpkins for a long time because after Zeitgeist, I kind of just stopped paying attention. I went back and listened to them, and it's not all bad, but it relieved a little bit of guilt or like, I was missing out. I was like, no, I mean, there's some stuff in here, but Live, I think honestly more conclusively than any other of the ones that we've done made me think I missed nothing.
You're absolutely right.
This was the weakest back half of a discography that we've run into, I think, and all the ones that we did.
No, I 100% agree. I made the right decision in buying Throwing Copper, Mental Jewelry, Secret Samadhi, marrying into The Distance to Here, and then never listening to them again. Beyond that.
Now that said, none of this weakened my. Sometimes I think that listening to all that Weezer may have like sapped some of my love of Weezer, and the same could be maybe said about Pumpkins a little bit, just because it just goes to show that Billy doesn't know what to do with himself and hasn't figured out the right way to approach this. Right. But I have not lost any of my love for those first 4 albums.
Absolutely.
They're still 4, certainly Samadhi, Throwing Copper, and even Mental Jewelry are on my like must have 90s albums for sure. And honestly, Distance to Here is not too far behind. But
Yeah, I found a newfound love for Distance to Here. I'll say that. So, who's ride or die for live? I am not. I'll take 90s live, and that's all I need.
Nope. Like I said, the band should have ended in the year 2000.
It should have died.
Yep.
Oh, they should no longer have been live.
They should not have been live after that.
I see what you did there.
I think Ed did some solo albums, and that's what he should have done, and that's what he should still do. And then the other members could have gone off and done whatever, and because that's essentially what happened anyway. Like they made their albums, but I don't think they were together. I don't think they were in the cohesive unit of a band anymore after that point. I think it just kept going downhill, and then he fired everybody.
Do you guys remember the No Talking Just Head album where it was everyone but David Byrne? Yeah, yep. Ed's on one of those tracks, and I love that song.
Yeah, it's a great song.
Let me understand this right. I don't remember how the whole song goes, or the name of the song, but I really like. Okay, yeah, I really like that song. He also apparently did an album with like one of the guys from Candlebox and stuff that I have not listened to. But Ed can be so good, but when it goes wrong, I'm surprised how bad these albums were. I was a little sad.
Yeah,
that's okay. I don't ever have to listen to them again, and I won't.
Yep, that's the thing. All right, unless there's anything else,
I'm good. No?
Nope.
Oh, good.
All right, then. That was our deep dive into the band live, our Ride or Die series. We'll probably have another one of these for you in about 6 to 4 months, maybe, because that seems to be the pace we're going on. Don't know what we're going to do next, but you'll be able to find it wherever you're listening to this. And we've got other ones if you like this one. So, yeah, we'll see you then.
I caught it on audio.